Hi everyone, I would like to share with you today some glass stands that I have been making for my projects. I started making these, I think a couple years ago now. And I am using the Miracle Mesh from Milkweed Arts. And I really like this product, not only for shaping my organic leaves and things that I'm painting, but using it to make these glass stands. There's a lot to consider here when you're making these, but I make them in 3 different sizes to accommodate different thicknesses of glass art that I've done. And so I have here a little 6-inch tile of a cat that I had painted. And so I have one glass stand that fits in. This second stand will fit the double layer glass, but it also does a single layer glass. And this is a 5x7, so my little geisha girl sits vertically in this stand really nice. I used a transparent gray to make these 3 stands that I'm showing you here, and an 8.5-inch diameter plate goes in this stand. And I just am not such a fan of some of the stands we have available as glass artists. So I was just brainstorming and tried to figure out how I could make something to fit the pieces of work that I do. It's not going to house anything super tall, or you certainly could go wider with it with a few adaptations to the process. But what I wanted to share with you here is that first I have a template on how this is laid out in the kiln. And these are, you start out with 7-inch strips. I'm cutting one 7-inch by 7 7/8. I'm cutting one 1-inch by 7 inches. And then in the center, and this is key, in the center you have it's 2 inches in depth and 7 inches long. And so you place a 2-inch by 1.5 dead center, and then a 1 by 2 on either end in the kiln. And the important thing here is that when you're setting this up in the kiln, is that you're setting your shorter strips down first, then you're going to put your strips on top, because we all know that glass wants to be 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters when it fires. And so while this appears to be rather close, when it fires, that gap spreads and allows for a 2-layer piece of glass, full fused glass, to go in that slot. So it's all about the accuracy and the measuring here. The other one that I did here to accommodate a little bit taller piece is I've done a 3/4 inch strip in the front and 1 1/8 in the back. And then for this 8-inch plate, I did a 7/8 inch strip in the front and 1 3/4 in the back. And that's going to be key to how the piece sits in the stand, and adjust for this weight that's falling backward by just increasing the amount of mass of glass that you have in the back. So the front can stay rather narrow, but the wider you have it in the back, the taller the piece can be. And you just want to make sure that when you're laying it out, you have this gap laid out in your kiln. That's the important thing. Okay, so I'm kind of blumbering here, but this was just kind of on the fly here. I'm putting this together for everybody. The glass is cut that way, and what I do with this Miracle Mesh, and I'm not going to start with a fresh piece because it'll take too long, but what I've done is I've just created these blank pieces to go in my kiln. Okay, some of these I fired on. I didn't use any boron nitrate. I didn't use any thin fire paper. I just set the glass on top. So there's 2 different ways you can go here. Once that full fuse is done, you have this strip with these 2 openings in that middle. And so you center that 1.5 inch gap on this 2-inch center. So by doing that 1.5 inch piece of glass in the middle drops flat onto your screen, onto your Miracle Mesh, okay? And then the gaps then is where you get the bend in to accommodate your artwork, okay? So I have done 2 different sizes here. I did several of them. I'm doing 1 inch, a 1 inch with a 1 inch fold, 2" in the middle, 1" 1". And then for this larger one that I put the wider strip of glass in the back, I did 1¼ inch, 1¼ inch, 2". 1¼ 1¼ So originally when I first did this project, I also had the miracle mesh that was coming out this direction, and I figured out I didn't need that. I could allow the glass to fall directly onto fire paper lined kiln shelf to become flat there, because it's really hard to have those. If you continue the flap here, it's really hard to get it totally flat. So what I do is this one I'm going to demo on here. I just have a strip of this left, and what I do is I take a ruler and I bend straight up both of the beginnings of that little teepee that you're going to be doing. Okay, so you bend that straight up, and so I have my 2" space in the center that a 1 inch, 1½ inch piece of glass is going to be dropping into when you drape it. And then I take the ruler on the other score here that I measured. I use Sharpie marker on this, and I bend that piece down. So I do that on all sides. Be careful with this. I sliced my hand the other day. After I cut it, I had a loose wire, and it's pretty sharp, so I should be using gloves here actually. So once you have that done, then you just play with it until you get this bend to have this side touching your flat shelf surface, and that is all the space you're going to need to lay that glass on top of and drape it. So you know, I've also created this one where I can actually do 4 at a time with a long strip of the miracle mesh. I think it's 12 inches. 12 inches, maybe, yeah, 12 inches long, and I was able to make one long one here that I'm going to be able to make just a series of different size glass stands. So I hope you find this helpful. They're fun to do. Just reuse them. Like I said, I don't use any boron nitrate or anything like that on the screen. I just make sure that the shelf itself in the kiln is you know, lined with paper so that your glass doesn't stick to your shelf. So the other thing that I want to mention here, let me just say, I just use a pretty much a standard full fuse. I'll go ahead and put the my firing schedule. Adjust if you need to, but try mine first. I'm using, this is on COE 96, so you just need to change the anneal time. I'll go ahead and put the firing schedule for the my drape and my full fuse for the initial firing on this printout. But the other thing I wanted to touch base with you on is that laying this out in your kiln is extremely important. So you can either take your thin fire and you can mark it out with pencil exactly the way it's going to be laid out on your thin fire paper, so that you can make sure everything's square, or you can take a piece of bullseye thin fire and you can cut it to 8.5 by 11, and you can put it in your DeskJet printer and print out the template that I'm providing, and then you have that ready to go. And then that all just burns off. So it's not reusable, but at least you have the ability to line everything up precisely in the kiln before you do your firing. All right? Thanks, everyone.